They canceled me for talking about Harvey Weinstein before the thing came out, but he offered to suck my penis in front of all my people at my agency. What am I supposed to do? He did all of that. I'm thinking I'm the only black person on the script. I get there, it's 3 other black guys on there. Woo.
So you wonder what they do?
I told him no. What y'all do? And this is why when I walk in a room, heads go down. Behind my back, I'm nothing. I'm just a regular old comedian that's bitter and jealous. But in my face, no. The king has walked in and they have to respect it only because I've not taken the shortcuts. I've not been funded. They pay you to not talk about things they don't want you to talk about. They tell you that themselves. I can't do that because Steve told you that he stopped doing stand-up because he has 7 TV shows. The only problem is when he stopped stand-up, he didn't have those 7 TV shows. He stopped stand-up because he got in a comedy battle called the Championship of Stand-Up Comedy with one Katt Williams in Detroit in front of 10,000 people and lost because Katt Williams said he was actually bald and that was a wig. And I went in and that's why he couldn't do stand-up anymore. Imagine him coming to tell you another story where he got so big and it was Bernie and them's fault because they wanted to be movie stars.
In January 2024, a comedian sat down for a podcast interview and broke the internet. Not because he said something shocking for shock's sake, not because he was chasing a moment, but because nearly everything he said turned out to be true, provable, and documented, and the industry that had spent 2 decades calling him unstable suddenly had no answer for it. That was Katt Williams on Club Shay Shay, 80 million views, the most watched podcast interview in history at the time it dropped. And by the end of it, a significant portion of the culture had to reckon with something uncomfortable, that the man they had written off as a conspiracy theorist and a loose cannon might have been one of the clearest voices in entertainment for years, and they had been trained not to hear him. This is the full story. Micah Sierra Williams, born in Cincinnati, Ohio on January 25, 1974, did not come up through the traditional comedy pipeline. He did not go to open mics in Los Angeles, get discovered, and sign a development deal. He hustled. He performed on the streets of Cincinnati as a child, getting chased by police for performing without a permit while still a preteen. He moved to Atlanta as a teenager, homeless and on his own, and built his craft from nothing in an environment that was not designed to support him. By the time the industry found him, he had already developed something that most comedians spend entire careers trying to manufacture: a relationship with the truth. Not the safe, focus-grouped version of truth that gets you booked on late-night shows. The raw, specific, sometimes dangerous version that makes audiences uncomfortable before it makes them laugh. His comedy specials were legitimate cultural events. It's Pimpin' Pimpin', The Pimp Chronicles, American Hustle. These were not niche releases. They sold out arenas. They generated tens of millions of dollars. He was one of the highest paid stand-up comedians in the country at his peak. And somewhere inside that success, he started doing something that the industry does not forgive easily. He started telling the truth about the industry itself. He talked about Harvey Weinstein years before the New York Times investigation that blew everything open. He said Weinstein had made a specific, documented advance toward him in front of witnesses. He named the incident clearly and publicly. The reaction from the industry was not investigation. It was mockery. It was the same response it always gave. Katt Williams is unhinged. Katt Williams is reckless. Katt Williams is not to be taken seriously. And then the Weinstein story broke in 2017, and the entire entertainment industry had to pretend it had not known exactly what Katt Williams was talking about. That pattern, speak truth, get reframed as unstable, be proven right, is the defining rhythm of his career. He talked about how the industry has a financial incentive to keep certain voices quiet. He talked about being offered money to stop discussing things the machine did not want discussed. He described specific mechanics of how entertainment figures get their images managed, their credibility attacked, and their platforms removed when they stop cooperating with the narrative. And every time he said it, the headlines were about his behavior, his arrests, his personal life, anything to redirect attention from the content of what he was actually saying. The arrests matter in this context because they were real. Katt Williams has had public incidents, legal trouble, erratic moments that were documented and reported. It would be dishonest to pretend otherwise. But here is what the industry understood, that most casual observers missed. Those incidents were the story. Not because they were not real, but because they were infinitely more useful as a narrative than anything he was saying about power structures and payoffs and the way entertainment figures get managed into silence. Every arrest was a gift to the people who needed the conversation to be about Katt Williams the person, rather than Katt Williams the witness. He addressed this directly in the Club Shay Shay interview. He said that every person who has spoken clearly about how power operates in entertainment has been made to look like the problem. The story is never about what they said. The story becomes about them. And once the story is about them, nobody has to address what they actually said. He cited examples. He connected dots. And Shannon Sharpe, to his credit, let him talk. The Steve Harvey story from that interview became one of the most clipped and shared moments in recent podcast history. Katt described a comedy battle in Detroit in front of 10,000 people, where he and Steve Harvey competed directly. His account was that Harvey lost that battle, and that the narrative Harvey later built about why he stepped away from stand-up, the one about getting too busy with television, was a revision of what actually happened in that room in Detroit. Whether every specific detail was accurate is a matter of debate. But the broader point he was making, that successful entertainers often construct cleaner versions of their stories for public consumption, is not controversial at all. It is simply how the business works. What the Club Shay Shay interview actually demonstrated was not just that Katt Williams was funny or sharp or entertaining, though he was all of those things. It demonstrated that 20 years of being called crazy had not cost him his memory, his specificity, or his ability to construct a coherent argument under pressure. He came prepared. He had receipts. He knew exactly what he was going to say and why he was going to say it. That is not what instability looks like. That is what someone looks like when they have been preparing for a moment for a very long time. The industry reaction to the interview was revealing in its own way. Some of the people he named or referenced went quiet. Others responded with vague denials or redirects. What almost nobody did was engage directly and specifically with the documented claims he made. Because the playbook for handling Katt Williams, reframe, dismiss, redirect to his personal life, does not work as well when 80 million people have watched the conversation and can compare what he said to the documented record. Jaguar Wright had been making similar observations for years at significant personal and professional cost. She came from direct access to bad boy and early Rockefeller circles and had described power dynamics in those environments in specific detail. Her accounts were also dismissed, and her credibility was also attacked. The pattern she described, voices that become inconvenient getting managed out of the conversation, is the same pattern Katt Williams named. Neither of them invented the observation. They were describing something that people who work inside the entertainment industry have known about privately for decades. The difference is that most people inside the machine calculate the cost of speaking and decide it is too high. Katt Williams made a different calculation a long time ago. He said it himself in the Club Shay Shay interview. He said he could afford the truth, not because he was brave, but because he was already outside the machine. When you are outside the machine cannot do anything to you that it has not already done. That is a specific kind of freedom that most entertainers never reach. Not because they lack courage, but because the cost of reaching it is everything the machine was offering them. Career stability, platform access, industry relationships, the ability to move freely in professional spaces. Katt Williams gave all of that up, or had it taken, depending on how you read the timeline. And what he has left is the thing that the machine genuinely cannot touch: his memory, his mouth, and an audience that has been watching long enough to know the difference between someone who is genuinely unstable and someone the industry needs you to believe is unstable. 20 years into a career that the industry tried to end multiple times in multiple ways, he is still here. The Club Shay Shay interview was not a comeback. He does not frame it that way, and neither should we. It was a conversation that finally had a platform large enough to match what he has been saying all along. The machine could not make him stop. It could not make him quiet. It could not make him revise or apologize or cooperate. And so it did the next best thing. It waited for him to self-destruct. He did not self-destruct. He sat down across from Shannon Sharpe and talked for hours, and the whole world listened. That is the Katt Williams story. Not the arrests, not the incidents, not the headlines designed to make you look anywhere but at the content of what he has been saying. The man they told you was crazy turned out to be one of the few people willing to say it out loud. Drop a comment. Do you think Katt Williams has been vindicated? And what was the moment from the Club Shay Shay interview that hit hardest for you?